Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our latest podcast. I am joined today by Jamal Aziz, who is the executive director of RSIL. It has been quite a long time coming. Finally, we've gotten him here to discuss the concept of lawfare, and that's really what we're going to be looking at throughout the day. What is lawfare? How has it been applied in our region? How does Pakistan fit into this discussion? What are the issues of capacity with regards to lawfare? And how can we play a role or utilize it to the best benefit of our national interest. So Jamal, welcome. It's good to finally have you here and for us to be doing this
इतने
podcast.
अरसे से हमारा ये प्लान था कि हम ये पॉडकास्ट करेंगे बट आई थिंक व्हेन वी डू दिस द फर्स्ट टाइम इट बिकम मच इजियर टू डू दिस
Well,
repeatedly.
Well, it depends on how this podcast goes, right? So
Yeah.
but I'm sure it's going to be good. So Jamal, we've, especially in recent years, and especially the last year or so, we've seen that lawfare as a concept has really gained a lot of popularity in Pakistan, in foreign policy circles, in national security circles. We're understanding it as a distinct concept, which the state needs to build its capacity in, or needs to engage in at least, to better understand or better pursue its national security objectives or national interest in that regard. So how do you frame lawfare? Or how do you look at lawfare? How do you define it, perhaps?
Thank you, Oves. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's always, it feels good to be, starting off with this new medium for getting our ideas across. हमने ये realize किया था कि ये podcast का जो plan भी ये है कि to make our material more accessible. Now, lawfare is a classical example, is something that we've been reading and researching about for years now, seeing the practical application of how it's worked in Pakistan, against Pakistan, seeing how the nation and the public policy setup has responded to this space. And what has become apparent is that no one knows all the answers.
Absolutely.
No one knows all the answers. Everyone has speciality in different areas. हमारा ज़्यादा international law पे है. This has a political dimension to it, an economic dimension to it, geostrategic, and many other mediums. So the purpose of starting these podcasts is to start bouncing ideas off each other, making this a more accessible medium to other people, and inviting their views and perspectives, so that ultimately we can address these issues more holistically and
Absolutely.
in a coming to your question, lawfare is something. Well, first of all, the history is that Pakistan in the past 2 decades has faced a lot of visible setbacks on the international arena. A lot of that is traced down to legal frameworks and legal processes through which we have been held to account. So whether that has been counterterrorism, do more, unwilling, unable, drone strikes, human rights, humanitarian law, to more evolving fields like counterterrorism financing, anti-money laundering, climate change. All of these issues are becoming mechanisms through which we are being asked to conform to global standards, and being asked and being held to account for why we have not done enough. And interestingly, the dimension has shifted from international mechanisms to going in deeply into your domestic systems and questioning the roles of your judges, your police, your prosecution, your policy responses generally to things. So it's come, and it's something that Pakistan has faced a lot of stress on. But and I hope this podcast will hopefully try to make this clear. We have to, it's a slippery slope, because not everything is lawfare.
Yeah.
We can't make this into a very security. I don't think we should make it into a security space. सब कुछ जो पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ हो रहा है वो lawfare के साथ attributable है. And there's a lot of other things to it as well, which we can take up during this
Absolutely.
podcast.
No, I mean, this is a great point you raised. I think there's a tendency in Pakistan to really sensationalize this concept of lawfare.
Yeah.
And even the term lawfare, I'm not very comfortable with lawfare itself, because again, it sensationalizes something which, frankly, that's what law is, right? Law, if you look at the court system, it's an adversarial process. There is a level of conflict that is involved inherently in the legal field.
Absolutely.
So saying that you're utilizing law for conflict related issues, or for hurting the enemy, or defending yourself against the enemy. That's really not what it is. It's about looking at opportunities in international law and using them to your advantage. Now, can they be used towards, say, a hostile country? Yes, if you have the capacity in international law and you see an opportunity, then you can. But I don't think so I think maybe the term lawfare itself needs a slightly how should we say it, a softer look at it. Right. Like that. So and what I've always thought is probably one of the better definitions, and you get it from the Clausewitzian statement that war is continuation of politics by other means. And that's what I think lawfare is as well. Lawfare is the continuation of politics by other means. And that's something that we can discuss further in this. But Jamal, looking at our region, and we've seen the operation of whatever we call lawfare, but we've seen the operation utilized by hostile countries within this. You want to give a bit of a history on that as well?
Absolutely, I would love to. This is something which I've been discussing. We were testing out this hypothesis at different forums. So this is as you've been working with me on this. पिछले 1.5 साल से हमने मुख्तलिफ forums पे, senior forums पे कुछ अपनी theories को test out किया. And I was initially hesitant because I thought that we would get a pushback and be told that the reality is something very different. But significantly, people around overwhelmingly endorsed our position. So that was, scary as well as heartening to know that the research that we are doing here is actually applicable to policy. But broadly, issue ये है, मतलब examples अगर हम देखें, if you're saying, if you're defining lawfare that it is a tool, it's weaponizing or using the law or legal frameworks in a way to develop strategic pressure points on a country. If we take, and it's based on what your definition is as well. So उसमें अगर आप देखें, I think the Indians have used it very effectively in developing this narrative on Pakistan that it is a state sponsor of terrorism. Now, उसका example आप देखें, that did not happen overnight. The Indians did not just construct a narrative that the world began to buy, but rather they saw the shifting sands in international law. They saw that how towards after the rise of Al-Qaeda and after the rise of international terrorism, with the US embassy bombings in Africa followed by 9/11, international law में the sea shift happened. A sea change took place, a paradigm shift took place. और उसकी वजह से areas of law such as self-determination came down in importance. And that was replaced more on an emphasis on terrorism, on Security Council resolutions and frameworks, which made prioritizing counter-terrorism as a supreme thing over freedom struggles, over self-determination movements, over इन चीज़ों के साथ UN's SC resolutions 1267, 1373, which were, we know now that they were paradigm shifts in international law. But I feel that the Indians understood its complexity and its use much earlier than we did. So we saw that after the parliament attack on Indian Parliament 2001 में, उन्होंने mobilization की, army came eyeball to eyeball, and they had to pull down eventually. But with that, I think the lessons that they learned was that they realized the need to create public villains. So they utilized all the mechanisms available to them at the UN Security Council and also in the domestic laws of friendly states or powerful states in order to highlight Hafiz Saeed, Maulana Masood Azhar, Lakhvi, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, उनको उन्होंने specifically target किया. Now this, what I feel is lawfare. कि उन्होंने mechanisms identify किए. There was a listing mechanism.
The
UN Security Council का एक mechanism था, because दहशतगर्दी पे होता है one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So UN ने उस चीज़ को bypass करके एक list बना दी that if you are on this list, you are a global terrorist. So they began efforts to have these people proscribed as early as 2001. Us time pe the world was not buying it. Pakistan was on the right side of the West as well. But the Indians didn't give up. They built up the evidence. They kept approaching the committees. We see this in the files now. Files, domestic laws of UK, France, European Union, US, they utilize those laws to get them also designated as domestic terrorists under those laws.
So Jamal, just to help the viewers understand, what is the timeline we're looking like? India was persistent in doing this, but how long did it take it for
That's
to
a very good
succeed?
question. So 2001 से इन्होंने ये effort शुरू की, and it took until Mumbai 7 years later
Okay,
for it to take hold.
but they had already started the process. They had
Narrative
already-
शुरू हो गया था, हर
Okay.
जगह पे steps भी होते थे, but that's why it became so easy after Mumbai. We saw this avalanche of
Yeah.
policy actions against Hafiz Saeed and all JUD and all these things, because the homework had been done. They had been plugging away at it, and they had identified the correct legal
mechanisms.
and उसकी वजह से जब एक बार ये लोग terrorist list पे आ गए,
Mhm.
that is when the real lawfare began. Because then Pakistan anyway was a country which had many people on the 1267 list because of the war on terror generally as well. Every person that we did not take action against, because if you're on that list, you have to deny them,
States are obligated to deny
states
them.
are obligated to stop their funding, to stop their multiple things, arms embargoes, travel bans वगैरह. वो चीज़ें हमें समझ इतनी नहीं आती थी.
Mhm.
यहाँ पे ये इशू हाई कोर्ट्स में डिस्कस होता था. हाई कोर्ट्स में दीज ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस वुड अप्लाई एंड रिट जुरिस्डिक्शन एंड से कि हमारी फंडामेंटल राइट्स की वायलेशन हो रही. सुप्रीम कोर्ट्स और हाई कोर्ट्स को अहमियत का इतना पता नहीं था. दे सेड व्हाई इज द सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल फ्रेमवर्क डिपेंडिंग हैज़ एन इम्पैक्ट ऑन व्हाट वी डिसाइड.
Yeah, like I mean, if a person hasn't committed a crime within your domestic state, तो आप
Exactly.
किस basis पे उसके खिलाफ एक्शन ले रहे हैं, और
बिल्कुल.
वो भी punitive action.
प्यूनिटिव एक्शन. सो उस चीज़ को हमने समझा नहीं. जो हमारे रिएक्शंस थे वो प्रेशर बेस्ड होते थे. उसकी वजह से मुंबई ट्रायल्स में भी और ऑल दीज मुख्तलिफ इन्वेस्टिगेशंस में भी देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ मेस अप. A lot of issues came from the Indian side, but a lot of it we also were responding on a tactical level.
Mhm.
Strategically हमें समझ नहीं आ रही थी कि हमने किस तरह इस चीज़ों को करना है. And that started building up. Now that I won't go into the long history, but that has been the basis, and our several missteps and our inability to understand the complexity of this framework made it easier for Pakistan to then go on the grey list of FATF.
Okay.
Because आपके पास sustained examples थी that आपने prescribed organizations के खिलाफ action नहीं लिया, आपने उनकी banning नहीं की, उनकी रैलियाँ चल रही थी, how were they not denied access to funding, and so many other things.
But Jamal, before we go to FATF, and that's a really good point you raise, I want to discuss, one of the byproducts of India targeting, what you just mentioned, India targeting particular entities, individuals as those villains, and that was the byproduct was that they undermined the Kashmiri freedom struggle.
Yes.
Because
That was the overall strategic objective.
Strategic objective, right, is to label Kashmiri freedom fighters as terrorists.
Yeah.
And they did that through multiple legal means.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a political decision. It was through domestic legislation.
Yes.
So anyone who's taking up arms against, Indian forces in Kashmir is a terrorist, right? POTA and TADA and all of these things. And
Yeah.
AFSPA, all these laws that applied over there. And then you had the international realm.
Yeah.
Right. So you supported it through domestic legislation, and then you ultimately, your goal was to get the rest of the world to also recognize this. And to a large extent, they've been successful. Right?
Absolutely. And you saw from Mumbai to Pathankot and Pulwama and Uri, all of these cases were complex cross-border terrorism investigations, requiring a lot of, in any country, even if it was the two brotherly countries operating, a cross-border terrorism criminal case has a lot of complexities. You need
absolutely.
mutual legal assistance. You need to be coordinated on both sides. The investigation is in one country, the prosecution is in another country, different set of witnesses, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Us case mein bhi, we saw that the Indians were increasingly sophisticated in their approaches. Just the letter-rogatories that came to Pakistan between 2008 to 2015-16 were very complex, increasingly making reference to 1373 resolutions, UN Security Council obligations. वो dossiers वो Indians prepare करके, it used to go through all the formalities. A judge in New Delhi would have signed the permissions, applications would have been made for warrants. The correct procedure for mutual legal assistance was largely followed.
Okay.
यहाँ पे हमारी इतनी कैपेसिटी नहीं थी, वो mechanisms नहीं थे to be able to understand and process these requests and what those implications were. So multiple इदारे were dealing with, उसकी वजह से it also leads to your responses being fractured.
Yeah.
And ultimately the country loses out. अभी we can come to that later because of FATF. The silver lining is कि हमारी काफ़ी ये mechanisms or procedures for interagency coordination अभी ये improve हो गए हैं. So let's see how things work. But the Indians took advantage of it at that point because वो documents बेचते थे, उसमें glaring lacunas होती थी, which if we had proper setups here would be able to quickly identify and dispel. कि ये जो आपने इंफॉर्मेशन दी है ये तो एडमिसिबल ही नहीं है. पाकिस्तान इंडिया का एक ही प्रोसीजरल कोड है, एक ही कानून शहादत है. दे न्यू दैट अ लॉट ऑफ द डॉक्यूमेंट्स व्हिच वी वर प्रोवाइडिंग वर नॉट एक्शनेबल, फोटोकॉपियां दैट द इंडियंस वर प्रोवाइडिंग. बट वो अपना डॉजियर बना लेते थे, उसकी पैकेजिंग अच्छी हो जाती थी, यहाँ पे आ जाता था एंड मार्केटिंग होता था, P5 कंट्रीज को चले जाता था. हमने दे दिए, पाकिस्तान इज नॉट रिस्पॉन्डिंग.
So essentially what you're saying here is that, lawfare is not just a utilization of international legal mechanisms, but also very much a domestic legal mechanisms were being utilized to target another country.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest realizations that we need to understand is that when you're talking about lawfare, you're talking about a whole of government response at times, right? Where different entities within the state would respond to different aspects of an onslaught or a hostile maneuver against your state.
Yeah.
Right. So the Ministry of Interior may have a particular role to play, and the judiciary may have an important role to play, or the Prime Minister's office may have a role to play, and all of that goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just your diplomatic individuals who are involved there.
And you can see that to an extent. I mean, I don't know whether that's a discussion for later day or not, but how the Indians have been arguing that we are a state sponsor of terrorism, and their narrative, obviously conventional thinking पाकिस्तान में ये होता है कि the Indian narrative is prevailing because they're a bigger country, they have political clout, they're in the Western camp. That's fine. We're not going to challenge that. We're not going to dispute that. But having said that, as lawyers, they have been able to be more structured and focused in their arguments and in their approaches. हम जब कहते हैं कि इंडिया ने भी हमारे मुल्क में टेररिज्म कर रही हैं, डिस्टेबलाइज कर रहे हैं वगैरह, our responses are also, they don't have that legal finesse. They don't have that broad picture thinking, or sometimes the things that you are saying are crossing each other out. So whether those steps like it, rather than issuing political statements or public documents, have we followed the legal processes that back up our claims?
Yeah.
That is something which is very complicated.
No, absolutely. And taking this point, I think what you're essentially touching upon is the lack of capacity, right? And the work that we've been doing has been looking at the different levels of capacity that a state can have, right? So the first capacity level, the most basic one, is being able to recognize that this is a threat. Right? And at times we didn't even have that.
Yes.
Where it was too late. It was until the threat had metastasized and become something really dangerous for us that we really realized, okay, now we have to take action. So one, having this ability to scan and see where threats may come from, and understanding that. And then I think the second level of capacity, a higher degree of capacity, more advanced stage, is where you're able to predict that essentially issues or dynamics in world politics are moving towards this particular thing, where your nation may face a potential threat.
Yes.
And being able to plan accordingly in time to be able to thwart that. For example, and we're just going to move on to FATF now as well. Anyone who had any real understanding of FATF could have predicted that Pakistan is deficient before 2018's grey listing, right? We knew that there are problems coming about, that our threat levels are a lot higher than other countries, and we could have predicted this. But we didn't utilize, or we didn't have the capacity at that point to really make use of that. And that, I think, is something that is a clear example of where a state needs to have capacity. Otherwise, it will fall foul of international rules or international mechanisms there. So let's now get to FATF and discuss that in a little bit.
Can I talk about capacity though?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please. Capacity का तो I agree with you completely. ये हमारा favorite example है. कितने forums में हम ये कहते हैं कि पाकिस्तान में हमारे international law को जो approach है, that is very similar to a domestic अदालत. कि एकदम कोई इंसिडेंट हैज़ ब्लोन अप, इंडिया हैज़ एब्रोगेटेड आर्टिकल 370, पाकिस्तान ग्रे लिस्ट पे आ गया है, some major thing has happened, उसके बाद seeking an immediate relief to that specific issue
Yeah, I know what you mean.
and hoping कि एक हाई कोर्ट की तरह आप सुबह रिट पिटिशन फाइल करेंगे और आपको स्टे मिल जाएगा या कोई रिलीफ मिल जाएगी या समथिंग और द अदर यू कैन
या
गेट
कोई सेकंड चांस मिल
सो
जाए.
सेकंड चांस मिल जाएगा.
Yeah.
एंड इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में थिंग्स हैपन इंक्रीमेंटली. यू आर सपोज टू बी एबल टू देयर, मतलब अगर आप के खिलाफ इफ सर्टन कंट्रीज आर, हमने ये देखा है इन रिसेंट टाइम, द वरीइंग थिंग इज कि पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ तो यू कैन से के फैसले हुए हैं बिकॉज ऑफ आर चेंजिंग जियो पॉलिटिक्स वगैरह, बट अ लॉट ऑफ द टाइम्स वी सी के डिसीजंस में एक सर्टन अमाउंट ऑफ इरिटेशन होती है. There's a certain irritation or a frustration in the comments when addressing Pakistan, which is very bad because you should not, international entities should not be frustrated कि एक मुल्क जवाब नहीं दे रहा या comply से नहीं कर रहा or the responses are substandard or what you are arguing also falls on deaf ears. मतलब कश्मीर के बारे में again before I go into FATF, आप कश्मीर का सिर्फ देख लें, you can call it a lawfare move by India because उन्होंने legally ये सारी चीज़ें की हैं. I don't know whether it's entirely lawfare or not, but the fact is that the Indians were saying, the BJP के manifesto में तो 80 से है कि abrogate करेंगे. 2016 में तो वो बिल्कुल ही इस point पे आए थे कि they are going to कर की रहेंगे ये. We did not foresee it. It took us so long to understand what has happened. शुरू में तो if you remember पहले 2 महीने तो समझ ही नहीं आ रही थी कि कोई कह रहा था नहीं 370 abrogate नहीं हुआ, इसका ये मतलब है, उसका ये मतलब है, and what does it mean, and but all of these things seem to have been carefully planned out. You know कि domicile laws बदलेंगे, चीज़, there was a kind of a phased plan.
And I think we were very fortunate in the fact that RSIL had, I won't say predicted this, but knew that this was an option, right?
Yeah.
And we had something in the pipeline.
Yes.
That's why we were able to have a paper on this. You know, literally, I think it was 5th August के बाद, within 10 days, we had a paper which was outlining the international law steps on that.
But Oves, you would know this. We always discuss this. कि यार, the questions that are asked in our domestic policy space, I'm not saying they're asked of us, but the questions that we are hearing being asked, or बड़े basic होते हैं कि इसका क्या मतलब है और अभी हम ये क्या मतलब. We by now Kashmir and these issues, these are our existential issues, core identity issues हैं. इस पे तो हमारी बहुत ज़्यादा there should have been legal clarity on the different options. I mean, just आप देख लें कि GB को इंटीग्रेट करना चाहिए कि नहीं इंटीग्रेट करना चाहिए. I mean, apart from the fact सरताज अजीज़ कमेटी रिपोर्ट ने उसको डिटेल में डिस्कस किया वगैरह, बट फिर भी इतनी कन्फ्यूजन होती है in the legal circles. Whether this is possible, इसकी क्या implications होंगी, how will it work, so and you're seeing that spill over in different dimensions.
No, I think that speaks to two things which all relate to capacity. One is your lack of ability to archive, you know, institutional memory जो है वो आपकी नहीं, and then utilizing that for contemporary problems, right? So A, we don't have a good understanding of the past, and secondly, whatever limited understanding we do, we're not able to leverage it for present day problems.
Yes.
And I think that all goes and talks, speaks to this capacity issue. Which is very much the case. Mr. Aziz, if you are now, if you allow me, can we talk about FATF?
Of course.
So a lot of people are saying that FATF is an entirely political animal, and that this is politics by hostile states against Pakistan. What are your views? Do you think that it is a purely lawfare move? Is it just a political maneuver against Pakistan, a political decision, or is this something actually to it, actually to our grey listing?
So that's something very interesting. हमने एक और podcast पे भी we discussed some aspects of this tangentially with Noor Fatma. मेरा पर्सनल व्यू यही है, I won't comment on whether it has been used against Pakistan. We can only infer that. But मेरे उसमें ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग होती है कि इंटरनेशनल लॉ के जो इश्यूज हैं in this globalized world, it's now demanding real cooperation very fast. It's just World War II के बाद दुनिया was in a different shape, and 2021 में the world is in a different shape. Post World War II there was a need for unity and an international identity, and United Nations इसलिए बना, उसके everything was by consensus, and मतलब a lot of, we won't go into all of that academic debate, but एक different दुनिया थी, उसके different perspectives थे, different. Now you've seen challenges which countries have already been integrated. European Union type हो गए, technical standards across the world. It's become very easy for systems to be harmonized.
Yeah.
Right? Now उसके लिए you now need technical cooperation and you need to do it fast. So because anti-money laundering and terrorism financing is something in which the money always moves faster than those chasing it.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's always been an issue. It's only recently that I feel that international community भी excited है इस possibility से कि आप एक experimentalist framework होता है कि आप basically you say that how are we going to stop this issue? So funds are moving from illicit sources, and in order to do that, every country has different laws, every countries have different systems. So let's make the basic common denominator कर लेते हैं कि let's make sure that every country has these standards in place. They should have laws against terrorism financing. They should have bodies to enforce it. There should be objective criteria to judge whether those departments are moving efficiently using a risk-based approach, XYZ.
Okay.
Now ये उन्होंने standards बना दिए. अभी ये पाकिस्तान को अभी वो ये नहीं कह रहे कि आप ये कानून बनाएं, आप ये करें, आप इसको, but they are checking whether your systems are there or not. उसमें now this is a very technical field. इस चीज़ में आपने इसमें for a country to implement it, it has to have a very sound federal structure. It needs to have implementing bodies. It needs to have good processes पहले से. It needs to have strong institutions. वो तो हमें पता था कि पाकिस्तान में कितने अरसे से generally things have been going on autopilot for a long time.
If not
Degrading, exactly.
Degradation in the quality of services or in the capacity of government servants or people involved in this field.
Exactly. So उसमें फिर अभी now FATF की तो ये assuming that this is a framework evolving. Now if you were a hostile country, आप उसको ज़हरी बात है, if it suits your narrative, why won't you take advantage of that?
Absolutely.
So India had already since 2001 begun to understand the Security Council framework. They had begun to understand domestic laws. They had begun to understand that terrorism financing and money laundering is a grave kind of offenses. So they used one narrative and then they used all of that homework to further create a stronger case against you in FATF. So I think it's fair game. I mean that it was something that it was deficiencies to thi.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're essentially saying is that yes, there are elements of politics involved, that there could be hostile intent behind this. It's not, but the fact that the FATF rules and regulations were built for everyone, we were failing on that account, and that's why they saw the chink in our armor and they used it to their advantage.
Absolutely. So you can't say that FATF was made with the purpose of maligning countries
or maligning Pakistan, which a lot of people
absolutely think. Not. I mean, I think if anything, it is it has been difficult for Pakistan, no doubt, but from an international law academic point of view, a task force based approach to complying with international obligations is much more efficient and interesting compared to the regular treaty frameworks. और ये चीज़ अगर हम FATF से हट के, हमने लास्ट पॉडकास्ट में भी इसको अलूड किया था, बट क्लाइमेट चेंज में जब ये होगा, क्लाइमेट चेंज में वी सीइंग दैट कंट्रीज हैव अ इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट व्हिच इज क्लैशिंग विद कंप्लायंस.
या एब्सोल्युटली.
सो वो हर कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑफ पार्टीज में ये चीज़ डिस्कस हो रही है, बट ऑलरेडी फ्रेमवर्क्स बन गए हैं. और ये जो COP26 अभी आने वाला है, इसके अंदर देयर इज गोइंग टू बी डिस्कशंस on how to implement the enhanced transparency framework.
But Jamal, we have a billion tree tsunami, man. Is that not enough to get
planting trees is not going to be enough. वो और यही FATF approach होगा. FATF वो standards बनाएंगे, वो ये कहेंगे कि you need to have certain emission reductions, you need to have these targets. ये broad targets हैं 5-6. इन चीज़ों को करने के लिए every country will be required to do these level of actions. उसके लिए वो टास्क फोर्सेस बनेंगे और whatever the mechanism is.
And it'll with time become increasingly coercive.
Exactly.
Right? And as the urgency of the threat increases, right? So as climate change becomes more and more of a issue that's impacting.
Exactly. So then आपको basically जब climate change में तो हर चीज़ होगी, from factories to industries to your tsunami, agriculture to मतलब the whole of your economy is going to be affected. So will you then, हम अभी फॉर एग्जाम्पल गोइंग बैक टू द FATF थिंग, FATF का प्रेशर आ गया है, सो उसकी वजह से हमने धड़ाधड़ कानून साजी कर ली है, धड़ाधड़ वो जस्ट कंप्लाइंग विद FATF बिकॉज उन्होंने अपने स्टैंडर्ड्स बना लिए हैं और उसके साथ हमने बट हम यहाँ पे कोई नो वन इज़ डूइंग एन ऑल्टरनेटिव वॉइस के क्या जो हम कंप्लायंस कर रहे हैं इज़ दिस गुड फॉर द इकोनॉमी, इज़ इट गुड फॉर ईज ऑफ बिजनेस, इज़ इट गुड फॉर सो इफ़ वी हैव टू सेंड वी नो कि हमने वो पेमेंट RSIL ने एक वी हैव टू रीफंड वन ऑफ आवर clients money
at the end of a
at the
project.
end of a project.
Not that we did anything wrong. But
at the end of a project normal हो रहा था, अभी वो पेमेंट स्टेट बैंक में फंसी हुई,
yeah,
आपसे वो
because
नॉर्मल
they're saying it's an NGO to NGO transfer.
NGO to किस तरह, और पेपर वर्क हमारा सारा है, we're running around with all our contacts, with all our know-how, with everything
And it's
legal.
a small amount.
Small $1200 हैं,
Yeah.
you know, फंस गए हैं. सो ये तो आपने उल्टा ज़्यादा हवाला हुंडी के लिए चांस बढ़ा दिए कि यू आर फोर्सिंग पीपल बिकॉज पीपल हैव टू गेट थिंग्स डन. हम तो चले क्लाइंट को बता देंगे नॉट पॉसिबल, कुछ और सोल्यूशन निकालें, यू नो, बट पीपल हैव टू सेंड मनी अक्रॉस. तो उसके लिए
families there,
families
they have,
हैं.
you know, reasons for that. Running businesses, they can't just stop because of.
So that goes back to our ability to have. We have to be able, if you have to be compliant with this, you know, if you want to be protect yourself against lawfare, you not only have to have strong systems, but you have to have capacity to keep reviewing those systems.
Okay.
You know, तो climate change पे जब क्या आएगा, जब pressure आएगा, तो क्या हम अपने 100 laws बना लेंगे और choke down कर देंगे और economy बैठ जाएगी? How will it work?
And I think one thing that I wanted to mention here was that, you know, complying with international systems is far cheaper and far better than having to then resolve once you're stuck.
Yes.
So, for example, this fact of grey listing, I mean, you know, I think it's a US-based think tank that is estimated that, or you know, a think tank that's estimated that Pakistan has lost about $38 billion.
Wow.
Right? Now, I know there's been a lot of good. We've really fixed a lot of things in Pakistan because of this 2-year process, and it needed to happen. But $38 billion is not a small, is not a paltry sum.
It's
right?
almost the CPEC amount.
Exactly. And if we don't start predicting and understanding international mechanisms, where they're going, where are we deficient already, there's going to be far greater issues that affect us, and it'll be far more costly to fix them in the future. So, you know, a stitch in time saves 9. That is the approach we need to take with a lot of this. Absolutely.
And the ability, matlab, why is it that regulation जो है, global regulation, it's become an art. एक स्पेशलाइज्ड नीश फील्ड बन गई है. इसलिए हम जब RSIL में देखते हैं, वेदर इट इज़ थिंग्स लाइक बिजनेस एंड ह्यूमन राइट्स और हेल्थ सिक्योरिटी और ह्यूमन राइट्स जनरली और AML CFT, climate change, why is it that we're able to understand these different, completely different fields and be able to understand what is being said? Because it is based on a technical governance template. एक certain तरीका है, स्टैंडर्ड्स होते हैं, उसके इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए यू नीड टू हैव मैकेनिज्म. हम पाकिस्तान में डोमेस्टिक क्लैरिटी नहीं आ रही चीज़ों पे. जो इदारे हैं, देर स्टक इन द 18th अमेंडमेंट इशू. ये हम कर सकते हैं कि हम कर नहीं सकते, हु इज़ गोइंग टू बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल, पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे. सो अ लॉट ऑफ द इशूज़ दैट वी आर फेसिंग, और यही आप देखें कि 18th अमेंडमेंट के बाद भी ये काफ़ी इशूज़ आए हैं. इट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ a society which is evolving, but our decision making has become confused. We don't really know who's responsible for what, and that can only happen when वो जो हम कह रहे थे reaction mode में हम जाते हैं. Reaction mode works because it kick starts the machinery. कमिटियाँ high level बन जाती हैं, enforcement होती है, so it jump starts the mechanism.
Yeah, but when you're constantly running on adrenaline, you're not making the best decisions.
Exactly, right? And you're just doing patchwork. You're just adding patches on the system at different levels.
And essentially, you know, that's not really the function of a state. The function of a state is not to appease a foreign audience.
Yes.
The function of a state is to take action to, you know, keep your citizens as the top priority.
Yes.
And keep your people there. When you're so compelled to meet foreign, I won't say foreign, but meet international requirements, they become a lesser priority. And so we see, you know, with this plethora of legislation that has been passed with regards to FATF compliance, there are things that should have had a lot more debate in Parliament, that really should have been analyzed in a much better way. But they haven't turned out that way, and that's something that in, you know, longer term we'll see in the courts and we'll see elsewhere being analyzed in
I would add to that by also saying that we should also increase capacity is not just to be able to safeguard yourself domestically, But internationally, when these frameworks are evolving, for example, climate change वाला या health security वाला तो अभी बने नहीं है, वो तो हम predict कर रहे हैं कि 2-3 सालों में बनेंगे.
Yeah.
So what is our contribution internationally? How do we ensure that these frameworks are also protect the rights of developing countries, protect the rights of vulnerable countries, so that it's not one-sided, and that the international processes should also be reviewed. I mean, FATF में अगर आप I think Pakistan, after giving all of its experiences, should be able to push back and say that, fine, this was done, but in the future, it's not the best way to go about it. 2 सालों में 2 महीनों में या 3 महीनों में जब आप drastic change कर रहे हैं, so actually it will result in.
It's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
I mean, they're essentially asking for convictions within 3 months, right?
Yes.
And that is exceptionally dangerous,
Yeah.
because that doesn't mean you're getting safe convictions. That means
Exactly.
you're getting panicked convictions,
Exactly.
where state entities, the judiciary, these are under immense pressure
Yeah.
to act, and that is not safe. That is not within the rule of law discussion. I think there needs to be a very thorough review of this particular requirement. So Jamal, I think we've had a great debate on this, but one thing that we haven't touched upon is how do you counter lawfare? If we've discussed in quite some detail how particular moves have been done by India or by other states targeting Pakistan. There have been failures on our own front, but how do you counter lawfare, and in what situations would you have to counter lawfare?
So I think work has already begun on the counter side. Counter side में ये कि again, because Pakistan में security issues are always given a priority, like we realize कि कुछ visible setbacks हुए हैं in recent years. So relevant state institutions, different institutions have, from what I hear, they are setting up departments or entities or hiring people who have expertise in legal/lawfare issues. So वो तो एक step ये है कि eventually आपकी क्या but हमें पता है in our viewpoint is that lawfare का चले एक लफ्ज़ है, it's caught on, and it has value to the extent that people have become awake to the threat. So it serves its utility in order to tell people कि यार international legal regimes के साथ compliance और उस चीज़ में expertise develop करना is a national security priority, because if you don't have that, you're going to be exposed.
Yeah.
But going forward, I think we should not encapsulate the whole debate in a very security paradigm कि हम ये करेंगे ताकि फिर हम भी वापस ये करेंगे type को. I think the answer lies in developing, and what RSIL has always been standing for is कि आप अपनी इंटरनेशनल लॉ में और ये स्पेशलाइज्ड नीश एरियाज में एक्सपर्ट कैपेसिटी डेवलप करें on an institutional level. That will help your lawfare problems, because whenever it will, like you said, it will help develop your ability to scan the horizon and foresee threats before they become reality.
Absolutely.
To change the narrative by giving better scholarship, by giving better arguments, to contribute in the development of those international regimes as well, and to review them as well, or domestic processes को भी as well. तो हमारा तो यही approach है RSIL में, that we are thinking that इस चीज़ों में this needs to be something which is inculcated at the university level.
Okay.
So not a lawfare degree, but a national security law and policy.
Absolutely.
National security law and policy is something which needs to be studied better, needs to be, the case studies have to be updated. हमारी curriculums भी outdated हो चुके हैं, हमारी thought भी थोड़ी सी stagnate हो चुकी है.
And I think there's a real failure to realize the complexity with which the world is operating now.
Yeah.
Especially after 9/11, especially after the international realm is.
अभी कोविड के बाद कितनी changes आएंगी? तो अभी beginning stages.
Navigating that now requires a lot of work.
I mean, just see the tech battle that is heating up between China and the US. Chip technology.
Chip technology, yeah.
If that causes a hard divide between the instruments that you can use or your defense contracts or whatever you can do, that can create a major. Are we even thinking along those lines? What can those challenges potentially be?
Yeah.
Which things are going to get affected? Then strategic litigation is also a challenge. मतलब CPEC जो है, CPEC can be easily sabotaged by a couple of cases, writ petitions filed strategically at different forums.
No, that's very true.
Stay
and you're
orders
talking
are
domestically. Yeah.
So you never even know, because आपके जो courts हैं Pakistan में, you can get a stay order or you can for no reason whatsoever, and then it drags on and things gets reduced. You can stop payments, you can remove individuals, at high performing individuals of public sector entities. You can, those are मतलब that's very overt lawfare वाली बात है. But that is also a challenge that we can look at. फिर और चीज़ें आप देख रहे हैं कि नहीं, मतलब hostile countries, आपकी जो war gaming होती है, हम this concept which me and you often talk about is legal war gaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tomorrow India abrogates the Indus Water Treaty. I mean, they can't do that under the terms of the treaty, but they find a way to.
Going to be?
They find a way to make the treaty dysfunctional, which they're already doing by not engaging with it.
No, but I just heard today that the Indus Water Commissioners are going to meet in Delhi.
Okay, that's good.
That's good.
That's good.
But you're right. I mean, we should be prepared for these things. These are eventualities that may definitely, there's a possibility that they will arise.
तो उसमें फिर आप अगर वॉर सिचुएशन हो जाए, आप वॉर सिचुएशन में इमरजेंसी, व्हाट आर द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स दैट यू गोइंग टू डू विद फ्रेंडली कंट्रीज फॉर सप्लाई ऑफ इक्विपमेंट, ऑयल वगैरह. मतलब लॉफेयर की एक वो डायमेंशन है, प्रॉपर क्लासिकल लॉफेयर, कि आपके ऊपर एक हमला हो रहा है और उसको आपने अवर्ट करना है. बट अ लॉट ऑफ इट इज़ देन नॉट जस्ट अवर्ट or covert measures, but generally we need to build our capacity, be able to scan the horizon and foresee threats, and be able to have better policies in response to it. Then you won't need to use this word lawfare.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the world really has changed quite a bit, and I think things have gotten a lot more complex than they used to be. I remember whenever one of us used to leave the office early, we used to say, "Call me if there's an international law emergency," right? And that at that time seemed like a joke, but I think more and more you are seeing that there are high adrenaline moments when it comes to international law and its application in Pakistan.
And that's what's exciting for the university students. I mean, if there any university students listen to this podcast, there is such a bright and exciting career available to you if you start looking into these areas. RSIL is going to be, for its part, going to be trying to develop capacity into these areas as well, to kind of highlight. And again, our focus is not going to be in the offensive strategic realm ki kis tarah aapko is cheezon ko jawab,
but on I think the
on the big picture capacity.
How to be a responsible state in the modern international realm.
If you understand international dispute resolution, if you understand how to deal with a case, how do you deal with mediation before it blows up into it, those things are kind of best practices that are going to stop those high profile embarrassments happening to you.
Absolutely.
A lot of times हम उस चीज़ों को lawfare कह रहे हैं जो lawfare है ही नहीं. It's purely traceable to domestic bungling of a matter.
And I think that's also a key issue, realizing that not everything is a world strategy by the Illuminati against you.
Yes.
It is sometimes your own failures. Right? Calling a spade is an important thing. And it's not like we haven't had a history of incompetence. Right? We have messed up many times. I think that is a starting point to recognizing that Pakistan needs to fix itself in certain areas. And then from there, yes, when something unfair or completely blatantly as has been used numerous times.
मतलब वही बात है, they're all connected. एक चीज़ है कि incompetence की वजह से भी हुआ है, but then those chinks in your armor, as you said, are also aggressively exploited by hostile countries with a malified intention.
Absolutely.
So there is an element of weaponization, but it's also tied with and when we start countering that, there needs to be a realization that what are the priority areas to work with. Not everything is lawfare. Not every, like for example, I would not classify the arbitration decisions against us, the arbitrary awards against, as lawfare.
Because I mean, lawfare would seem more to be an intention based, that you have the intent to take action against another state.
Or you had a strategic plan to bring to change a narrative against a country, and then you plug away at different sources, like the disinformation lab, for example. That is, I would say, lawfare ka ek stark manifestation.
Absolutely.
There was malified, wrong disinformation was used.
Fake entities were created. They were used to propagate fake information. mainstream Indian entities were utilized to
Yeah.
propagate that further because
Exactly.
the basis was one of these fake
And
entities.
you utilize all international mechanisms at ECOSOC and at the Human Rights Council to build this narrative that Pakistan is, not only it's a state sponsor of terrorism, but it's also not compliant with the rule of law. It's also a human rights violator. It's also just a country which is just bad
But
all
just,
around.
just for the viewers, I think we need to explain this a little bit.
Hmm.
ECOSOC or UN, having the ability to speak at these, you have to be accredited by the ECOSOC committee. Now, the ECOSOC committee, the Indians are sitting there and the Pakistanis are sitting there, so it's very difficult for these entities to actually get registered, Pakistani so what the Indians did was, knowing that Pakistan wouldn't allow such an entity to get registered, they looked at old defunct entities that had received ECOSOC membership.
Yeah.
Right, in the past, and then they were defunct, they were dead. They bought the names, or they bought whatever the was, and
resurrected them,
and utilized those to get access to the UN to malign Pakistan. For example, the International Canners Association, which was about tin cans and protecting the rights of canners around.
वो बलोचिस्तान के खिलाफ बातें कर रहे थे.
Exactly. And a number of other such entities. But I think the best thing that has happened, one, this was not a Pakistani initiative, right? Disinfo Lab was a complete third party. Secondly, it exposed a lot of the, how does one classify this? The depths to which certain state entities in the US, in the UK, in India, would go to target Pakistan.
Yeah.
Right.
And that tells you the nature of the threat is real in that regard, right? Ke wo, they have developed this capacity to put these pressure points, these legal pressure points, और उसको वो our flank is completely exposed.
Yeah.
Right. So इसके बारे में हमारा क्या जवाब है? Are we doing it in a structured, institutional manner? For example, it's very easy to go about, it's not easy at all, but if you were supposed to counter this, there's one way to do political pressure and condemnation and ikhbar mein wo and events and press conferences. But are we targeting these entities in a surgical fashion now? Because they've violated many laws. They've done domestic law जहाँ पे वो incorporate हुए हैं, Belgium वगैरह में उनके उन्होंने violations किए हैं. Potential defamation ki unhone cases.
So are you talking about counter lawfare here, essentially?
Counter lawfare, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's looking at these entities. Some were registered in Belgium, some in the UK, some here and there. How would you go target them? You would look at the domestic laws of those countries.
Yeah. You would look at the domestic laws of those countries. You see what they've been violated. Unki jo, the things that they've said that they were doing in their company registration, वगैरह, the purposes were completely different to that. So. UN में ECOSOC, you call for special meetings on this, and you cancel their accreditation status. You ask for rectification of the record HRC के अंदर. You target the specific parliamentarians who broke their code of EU parliamentarians जिन्होंने अपने code of conduct की violation की by affiliating themselves with entities without doing the proper due diligence, and many other things as well.
Yeah.
Point is, it has to be part of a strategy. Lawfare में अगर आपने, if there's going to be any value to what we're saying, what we're trying to say is कि आपने जब lawfare या counter lawfare करना है, you have to think of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
कि आपका objective क्या है? एक country को discredit करना, अपनी reputation को enhance करना, बचाना, horizon scan करना, threat for, उसके मुताबिक your choices should respond to that, which are in a coherent fashion.
Absolutely.
Your foreign office should be working in tandem with your Ministry of Interior for mutual legal assistance and for spokespersonship, or with your police, from your criminal justice to your foreign office. Everything has to be on the same loop.
Yeah.
Everyone has to be following a certain perspective, a certain, जिस तरह FATF के केस में हमने देखा है कि जब objective है grey list से हटना, immediate outcome 9 or immediate outcome 7, और उसको फिर सारे इदारे are, a common vision is there, so they're able to come up with solutions which are domestic, which are effective.
Absolutely.
What is the bigger picture? What are we trying to do? इस चीज़ पे clarity चाहिए, and then one should not jump the gun. Then sometimes it's better not to immediately pursue. मतलब यही बात है कि अगर आपने disinfo lab में counter करना है lawfare, ये चीज़ें मैं तो सिर्फ I'm just saying it off the cuff. If I was if you were supposed to do this seriously, this is a serious consideration, because a lot of your moves might not happen. They
Yeah.
might backfire. They might dilute your perspective. So those are all the things to take into account. But the problem is this requires structured, focused thinking.
Absolutely.
So which entity is looking at this long term? I think now there are some encouraging signs.
Jamal, thank you so much. I think we've had a great discussion. I think a lot of the myths and you know preconceived notions that people had about the concept of lawfare have been dispelled. Hopefully, thank you for joining me. Thanks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.